Back in the 50s, we'd never had it so good, although some of us had never had it at all. Great Britain was going to get greater. Everyone was going to have cars and money. So they took a load of Geordies, Scots and Cockneys out of the rundown mines and the shipyards and dumped them in the middle of green and pleasant England. They built a new town and called it Telford. Their kids were going to grow up happy, healthy and well paid, making car door seals for British Leyland. 20 years later.
Hello, this is Telford the Ultimate Guide, a roads and transport special, part 1.
Before the new town came, the area was made up of several towns and villages. These were all linked together with trunk roads such as the A442, the A4169 and the A5. The coming of the new town saw the fragmentation of these small villages, which meant the rerouting of several roads. In this ultimate guide, we will identify the lost roads of Telford. Many of the larger towns, such as Dorley and Madeley, were congested with local traffic. As part of the new town planning strategy, this congestion would be eased with the new routes. Dorley, Madeley and Wellington were the first to get new bypasses, removing heavy goods vehicles from the town centres. During the late 1960s and the early 1970s, road construction in the new town was picking up pace. These new artery roads were vital links to new housing developments of Sutton Hill and Woodside. A collection of roundabouts eased the flow of the traffic, much to the dismay of the locals who thought it would be a town full of roundabouts.
Telford's roundabouts created what? It's actually when town planners' coffee mugs left rings on map. This is the 1960s planning meeting that saw the creation of Telford's roundabouts. At the same meeting, someone also spilt their tea, which is why Telford has a lovely artificial lake.
In January 1970, work started on the Eastern Primary route from Sutton Hill to Randley, with a temporary connection to the A464. The project was awarded to Tarmac and Percy Bilton at a cost of £2 million. This also included a link to the bottom of Madeley High Street with the creation of Telford's first roundabout. The road was opened on the 3rd of August 1973 by John Dugdale, the TDC chairman at the time. The construction of Phase 3 began in January 1974. This involved extending the road north to the Greyhound interchange.
Hello there, it's Steve here from Telford, the Ultimate Guide, and we are under one of Telford's many bridges. Now this is quite a unique bridge because this was one of the first bridges to be built in Telford, and this is in Madeley, and this carries Brockton Way over the Sumnall Road. Now you can see from it, it's actually a double deck bridge. You can look at the detail through there. Big concrete sections, I think there's probably 6 of them, maybe 6 or 7 of them to carry the road through, but it is epic concrete construction here. One thing that was extraordinary about this particular bridge is that you could get from the town centre off to Halesfield, and you could get from Madeley onto the Eastern Primary, but there was no exits or slip roads on this side, which is the Bridge North side. So if you wanted to come to Madeley, you'd have to get off at the roundabout at the start of the Eastern Primary. To me, that didn't make sense because they had the land to do that. But, you know, this is a main dual carriageway, and obviously they knew it was carrying, this is actually a piece of dual carriageway that's only a short space actually wide, but it shows that a lot of the roads in Telford were planned for further dual carriageways, and a lot of the roads were built wider than they needed to be. Today we're at Coalport, and this is the start of the Silken Way, a 14-mile cycle and footpath that leads right the way through the town. It starts here in Coalport and ends in Admerston. Now what's interesting about the Silken Way is why it was named the Silken Way, and it was named after Lewis Silken, who was a guy that was very instrumental in the starting of the New Towns movement. But it was open, this footpath was opened on the 1st of April 1977 by James Callaghan, then Prime Minister, and it was a big event. This was one of the longest footpaths in Telford. Only recently it has been replaced by the Telford 50-mile trail, which you know, but this is where it all started, and we're going to show you the start and the finish of it, and it's so popular. It's such a beautiful route through Telford. It goes along old canal beds, old railway lines, and it's some of the most spectacular open space that we have in Telford. It's such a diverse path and one of the oldest.
So here we are, we're on the Silken Way. This is the part of the Silken Way that leads to the Cockshut, and you have the Eastern Primary just over there. And this part of the Silken Way leads to Rockwoodine Wood.
Well, here we are at the end of the Silken Way in Bratton. 14 miles there, Silken Way. So, we haven't rode it, we haven't walked it, we've just come in the car because we've got a busy day today filming. But you can see what a great footpath this is, long distance. So, as I said previously, it's on disused railway lines, canal beds, etc. But a really nice ride on a bike or a walk. Give the Silken Way a try. A great example of a lost road is here in Prince Street in Madeley in Telford. Now this road I'm standing on, believe it or not, was one of the main roads to Sumnall, so that came all the way through here. So over this side you can see, if I headed up that way I'd be heading to Madeley. Over this side it takes us to Cuckoo. Now from Cuckoo onwards the road gets cut up because they built the Eastern Primary there and the road changed completely. So what we're going to try and find is a hidden bit of road where this continued up in Halesfield. So let's go and take a look. This is part of the A4169, the road that runs from Madeley to Sumnall. Now, to build, as TDC came in, they wanted nice straight uniform roads linking up to roundabouts. So this part of the road here, this sort of come in as sort of a bellow out, and it didn't really fit into the original line of the road, but just up there it joins back onto the new road. But you can see here the curbs are still in, so this little bit of road is lost completely, and where I would be standing now, traffic, you know, through the 1960s would be firing up and down here. Now it's quite a big substantial road, really well built, it's got a really good curb edge there, but if you follow me down around here, the road then follows down and then it comes back round on a curve, and just in between that is this sort of woodland area here, which was always originally there, and there's been a couple of little cottages along this road as well, and just been cut off completely. So this would have been the bank up to the top of Sumnall.
Telford needed a motorway to link up to the M6 and the rest of the rapidly growing road network of the UK.
Well, it's certainly all happening here in the heart of the Shropshire countryside, where they're ripping away the topsoil so that Telford can eventually get the long-awaited M54. These are the toys you need to build a motorway in 1981. A rubber-tired scraper like this, £200,000, would you believe? And then you need a bulldozer like the one behind here, £250,000 to give it a helpful shove. Because motorway building in 1981 is an expensive business. We're talking about £2 million a mile. And Douglas, the contractors, who also built the massive National Exhibition Centre, on this 4-mile stretch alone are employing 10 of these monster scrapers, 17 giant excavators, 16 colossal articulated dump trucks, and a dozen muck-shifting lorries. Their bill for the 2-year task of building this bit of the motorway, over £8 million. The farmland was only taken over 3.5 months ago, but already it's been transformed. However, farming must go on either side, and the agricultural traffic must still be accommodated. The communal garden ditch has to be given special treatment too. This one is being rerouted at enormous expense into a new double-decker tunnel, which will eventually provide a new home, not only for the ditch water, but eventually for the farm animals as well, all safely under the motorway. The 258-strong Douglas team also have to burrow a new path underneath the motorway for the main Wolverhampton Road, all part of the massive motorway challenge. Cameron, just, how much is one of those mouthfuls?
Well, there's about 5 tons in each one of these bucket loads, and 5 buckets in each of the dump trucks, the DJV articulated dump trucks.
And they're British, aren't they? A lot of your equipment is imported, but that's British.
That is all built in Britain, yes, it is indeed.
Quite an expensive item, though, isn't it, like a lot of the equipment?
Yes, you're talking about £60,000 worth at least.
I suppose you've been making hay with the weather, have you, like the farmers?
Yes, indeed. We've obviously had a very good spell since the middle of June when we started on this contract.
Doesn't it make the ground very hard, though, and more difficult to move?
Well, the top area here, as you see, we're digging in sand, which is not a problem, but below us is solid rock, and that all has to be ripped, and it's a very slow process, I'm afraid.
I mean, you move in as a team to an area like this. I mean, how do you find the local residents treat you?
Well, obviously, before this motorway started, there were problems about public inquiries, but once the contract has started, I think everyone accepts it, and we've got on very well indeed with the farmers. I think there's very good relationships all round.
Amazing when you consider that this was countryside in mid-June, and here we are at this stage. Interesting feature, though, on much of this M54 is that it runs in a new cutting. The idea being to reduce the visual impact on the surrounding countryside and also reduce the noise for the local residents. Something for them. There'll be 2 lanes of traffic here, hard shoulder, and on the other side too, another 2 lanes and a hard shoulder. I'm standing, of course, where the central reservation is going to be, but that's in 18 months' time. Of course, then I wouldn't be allowed to stand here at all.
It was required to allow new businesses to flourish and compete in the industrial heartland. Wellington in particular required a bypass. During the summer months, the A5 became a busy holiday route for people from the Midlands using the old Roman road to get to Wales. This resulted in long tailbacks lasting up to 6 hours at the Buck's Head. The much needed Wellington bypass came in 1975, linking the A5 at Cludderley to the Telford Centre temporary junction. The final stretch of the M54 to link up with the M6 was finally completed in November 1983. The Wellington bypass was renamed to the M54 in 1983 to create the 23-mile east to west dual carriageway motorway. The motorway is 18 metres wide, and the majority was installed with a slip-form paver which enabled large sections of concrete to be cast in long sections. 2 years after the motorway was opened, the concrete carriageway broke apart due to a poor subbase and was then reconstructed using tarmac. Since construction, various areas of the concrete motorway have been removed and replaced with tarmac at great expense to the taxpayer.
So this bridge is where it all started or ended. From here onwards, that's where the motorway was built, the Wellington bypass, from that point onwards. This area was just filled in with soil. You could actually, the bridge was actually half full of soil as well. But on this bridge you couldn't get on, there was no motorway this side, but you could come up 2 slip roads either side. Believe it or not, this is just a road bridge, but actually in the 1970s it was actually a junction. Telford Centre Junction. By the 1980s, Telford had an expanding road network. The Eastern Primary, the dual carriageway, was already built, but also the internal spine roads were being built, like this one here. And this is the Dawley to Donington distributor road. Although it's a single carriageway, it was also built so a dual carriageway could be accommodated as the town grew. That was really forward planning from the TDC planners, and eventually certain parts of the road network have now become dual carriageways, such as Lawley, but this is still, you know, it's not a very busy road, but you can see the green space either side just to accommodate that extra dual carriageway. As I've said previously, a lot of the roads in Telford were designed to be expanded in the future. Originally it was a single carriageway all the way up. It is actually, Rampart Way is known as the A5T, the trunk, which it leads, it's just another route for the A5 to follow through. Anyway, but they've widened this road now, and this is given access to different areas along the route here, and so it shows that the roads are expanding. So one of the roads we're on at the moment is this. This is the main A442. Now when I say the main A442, you're probably thinking of the large road that runs around Telford, a trunk road. Well, this actually was a trunk road, and this was the main A442 trunk road. Now this is the little bit at the top of Southall. So the A442 used to run from I think it was from Kidderminster to Whitchurch, and this was part of that route. So you can see here at the top of Mallory Drive in Aqueduct, but actually you can see where the road kind of joins, and later on it was bypassed. So let's go down and take a little bit more of a look at where the route of this road went. So we're now heading down towards the aqueduct, which is exactly why this little village got its name. You can imagine all the big lorries trundling up here on the way to Whitchurch or to Dawley or other parts of Telford, but you can see it's quite narrow. We're going to go down and take a bit more of a look at the bridge. So this is truly a lost road of Telford. Now obviously if you look over there you can see that's Aqueduct Lane there, but again the A442 would have come up there, it would come across here on a kind of bit of an S-bend, and then it would have followed straight the way down there and then up the hill to the Stone Aqueduct. So that's one section of road of Telford that's been bypassed and forgot about, and that's a main trunk road in Telford. It's hard to imagine the traffic coming up through here and squeezing through this little bridge, but this was the main trunk road. You can see though, the aqueduct is absolutely built beautifully dressed stone. It's quite high-sided, but you know, this was one of the first aqueducts. It's at the moment, they're waiting for funding to do essential maintenance on it. So at the moment, it's been fenced off to stop any falling masonry. Hi, it's Steve here from Telford Ultimate Guide, and we are going to ride through the Telford Town Park. Let's go and see what's there on the amazing network of footpaths.
For a new town to thrive, it requires an excellent public transport network. Early buses were provided by Midland Red and the Tellus branding. The route was then shared with an outside company, Shearings, and the Timeline branding. Now the bus service in Telford is provided by Arriva, who have evolved out of Midland Red. Let's take a trip down memory lane and look at some of the buses from the past in Telford.
Well, it's Telford Ultimate Guide, Roads and Transport, and it wouldn't be complete without taking a trip down to the Telford Steam Trust and taking a look at what some of the guys are doing here and some of their aspirations for the future. So who have we got here then?
My name's Paul Hughes, I'm the chairman of the Steam Trust.
Well, how long have you been here for now?
We can trace our origins back with TDC to about 1976. When they looked at buying an engine to go into the engine shed, where the original intention was to paint it prettily, put pictures around the walls, and that was it. BR was still using the yard at that time for the Horsey company of Amazon and Butley for taking girders and things out. So it kind of progressed from there. They restored the engine, and then they needed a bit of line, and it just sort of grew.
So that's quite ambitious by the TDC, because we were quite big on saving things, weren't they? And like some buildings, you know. And I can remember myself, the most iconic thing about this location was the train that was outside. It was stuck out there for years and years and years.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And the kids used to play in it.
Yeah. So there's been a couple of different locos there. One of the main ones was actually a loco at Andrew Barclay called Peter, which is actually at Bliss Hill. It belongs to the Ironbridge Gorge Museum and was stored on site. But we've obviously had lots of different engines through over the time, but that's the one you're probably your memory is of.
I can remember playing on it, and I think actually that, and I think there was an engine in Colbrook Dale underneath the arch at Colbrook Dale that kind of made me really like trains, and I have a little passion for it. So what you're standing in now, this actually has got a bit of a story to it, hasn't it? Because it's not always been here, has it?
No, I mean this is intrinsically linked with Telford. This is the Telford Town Tram. It was actually commissioned by Telford Development Corporation to run in the Telford Town Park. But unfortunately the project sort of stalled and failed. It used to run, the first phase of it ran from the amphitheatre along the back of what was the Coalport branch down to Coalport behind Wonderland. Unfortunately, Telford Development commissioned it. Once they realised that at the time public transport was regulated, and then they realised under their constitution as a development agency they weren't allowed to run any forms of public transport. You couldn't write it, but yeah.
Do you know what sort of life it had then, the tram?
So it became apparent that this was going to be an issue very early on. So they empowered the Steam Trust, which they were fundamental in setting up as well, to operate it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, at the time it was painted a bright yellow and a lime green, very much of it as a children's attraction.
And it was called Thomas, wasn't it?
It was called Thomas, but it was named by the Reverend Audrey. But it was actually Thomas, as in Thomas Telford, not
Thomas the Tank Engine.
Thomas the Tank Engine. We removed the nameplates just because of copyright issues and having that argument that no, it isn't a little blue engine, it is Thomas Telford.
But I believe you've still got them after all
we
these
have,
years.
yes, and we actually had a visitor come in, and the nameplates I discovered were actually made by students at the Phoenix School.
Wow, that's interesting.
Somebody came in, a lady came in the one day going, I made them.
Well, I've got a great bit of footage, and I'm going to include that in with this, is actually them opening that line up and the train going for the tram going for the first time, and little kiddies running alongside it.
8th of September.
I can actually remember the line being down. I always thought, cool, that's quite narrow. It's a narrow gauge, you know. And it's a true piece. So it's been here all this time. So you've got it here.
We moved it here in '91, and opened it. No, I think moved it in '88 and opened it in '91 on this site. It didn't run. It ran a couple of the Super Saturdays going back in the park. But the problem is that the railway volunteers, they just steamed our Great Western Tank Engine, 5619. We had very limited numbers of qualified drivers, and given the choice between a shiny Great Western Tank Engine and a lime green tram, unfortunately they chose the Great Western Tank Engine. So the project just kind of stalled. There was other problems of storm drains and things, and it was probably just too early for the park. I've always kind of said if they could have got it going Now, the way the park is now, it would actually be a wonderful...
I think TDC were looking at it, they were trying to be pioneers, weren't they?
They were, yes.
You know.
But unfortunately, it just fizzled out. The other part of the that people memory of this will be is that there used to be a photograph of it in the hospital on the wall.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yes, I do remember
and
that.
we also have that. When they redecorated, they actually donated it to us. So we actually have that other piece of history to go with it.
That is very interesting. I'm standing on Ketley Change at the moment, which is on the M54. Now, what's really unique about this interchange is it was very important in the Telford road network, because originally the road was going to run underneath the motorway. Now, what they actually did is built the bridges for it, but didn't actually use it. So we're going to go down and investigate a little bit further of where these would have run. So we're right in the middle of Ketley Dingle interchange now on the M54. Now you can see now it's a beautiful wildflower meadow. Over there you can see the M54 shooting past there, and this is the rest of the roundabout. So this roundabout is absolutely huge, but you can see here a lot of the manhole covers. You've got a lot sticking up around here. Now, as I was saying earlier, that the road used to run underneath here. So if we pan over this way, just there where that scrub area is there was a bridge underneath there. It's still there now, it was just filled in. So you'd actually, it was very, very deep in the cutting, and it would come underneath here. Now the ground level where I'm standing would have been so much more below this, so much below that actually it went underneath the M54 and underneath the other side of the junction. So Telford's road network was actually supposed to go round in a complete circle, and this was an actual underpass as well. They built it but never ever used it, and it's unlikely it's ever going to be used again. So you might be asking yourself, where did this beautiful meadow come from? Well, what happened is when the M54 was rebuilt, because they had a lot of problems with the surface of the concrete, etc., especially between Forge Interchange and this junction, they actually ground up the concrete and then they brought it up here and filled this area up completely with the rubble. And then over the course of a few years, a lot of lorries came in dumping topsoil on top of it and built the level right up. The bridges are still under here that was never ever used. So how much do you think it cost to build those bridges? Those additional bridges? And they're all gone and wasted completely, aren't they, underneath this roundabout? So again, we're in the middle of Kettley's change, and just take a look at this. There's some really nice wildlife habitats just almost kind of created out of nothing. I mean, this is just where water's caught here, and just look at it, you've got beautiful dragonflies all over the place. We've just seen a heron over there which we're hoping to get, we're going to sneak up on. Well, we are, it's Stephen Marcus here, and we are in the middle of, well, we're on the slip road, between the two slip roads from Tesco up to the motorway. Now we're here to try to find the plateau of the road, just to work out how deep the cutting is that used to go underneath the bridge, to go for the bridges. So I think we're just about getting to the bottom. It's still going down a little bit, but it's dense forest. Have we done the risk assessment? Marcus has done it.
Yeah, definitely.
We all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it got a bit hairy up there though, didn't it? It's such dense forest, isn't it?
Yeah.
But anyway, let's plough on. I've got my trusty whacking stick here, and we're just poking our way through here. And you can just see here how this, you'll be able to get an idea of this embankment in a minute, and you can see the wildflowers growing there as well. So here we are. I'll get a better idea now if I come over to this side. Let me just... Well, we're actually at the bottom of the embankment. If you can see up this side, you can see that it's actually a very, very steep cutting. Very dense in trees, but you can see up there you've got the cutting there. As you come down on the other side, we've got the same cutting there, but also we've got it levels out a little bit here, so we've got this level section. Now this is where we are now, where the road would have run through. So we've come down a fairly steep embankment now, haven't we? Quite steep. So we're right in the belly of the two slip roads. So let me explain where we are. So up on the bank there, we've got the slip road that takes you down to Tesco. On the other bank there, we've got the slip road that takes you up to the M54. We are down in the bottom of that on this area. So if I'm looking this way, I would be able to see the bridge that ran underneath the ring road of the roundabout, and then underneath the motorway. Now, why it was built this deep underneath here was to ensure that it went under the motorway, because the motorway is obviously lower. So the actual cutting had to be deep enough to go underneath the slip road, underneath the round island, and underneath the motorway. So you can see, as you can look back down there, you'll be able to see over there how flat it is, and that's actually was going to be the original road bed. And this is obviously part of the Grand Road system at Telford. Everything was going to be in a huge loop. So if they'd have actually carried on the Queensway all the way up through Trench, all the way all around, this was what it would look like, a complete curvinicular ring road, but it never happened. But it shows that the TDC planned for it, and they planned for dual carriageways to even come up here. Then these bridges could never be reinstated now because the ground level at Lawley has altered so much and it's a lot higher, and unfortunately the bridges are lost forever. Telford's road system was built to expand, and this is evident here. Now I'm actually at the bottom end of the Ketley Dingle interchange. Now what I was saying, as you say, the road would have ran straight through the middle of here on a dual carriageway, so if you look back over here you'll be able to see where the road would have come up the middle, and you would have had the slip roads up between. But here at Ketley Dingle there wasn't any retail park then. This roundabout wasn't here, there was just straight roads running all the way up. So if we go back over here, the road is meant to go straight across, down into a really steep cutting, then underneath the roundabout completely. That's what was planned here, but it was never ever done, and since then it's been filled in.
Thank you for watching, and join us again soon for part 2 of the roads and transport in Telford.